Glad to have everybody coming around this morning. We've got, let's see here. I want to put over and see the waiting room over here. We've got Michael Ross, Jay Waters, Daryl Cowles all joining us. Betty Mitchell is here. Looks like we've got a whole crew here today. I want to look at the, let's see here on the chats here. Gerald says hello from Kuwait City. That's great. Glad to have you here, Gerald. I've got 31 people here in the meeting right now. That's great. Let's see here. Going to get everybody joining here, and I need to turn off. I'm having a problem here. I'm in full screen, and I need to get out of full screen. Let's see here. Exit full screen view. There we go. Now then I can see everybody over here. That is great. The meeting today, we're going to have a great meeting. We're going to sit around and have some fun with talking some folks and listening to train stories of people who work for the railroad. I think it's going to be a great time. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. Let's see here how I'm going to get that done here. Unmute everybody, and so everybody can say hello if you'd like. I've got David. I don't know who David is here. It's not Cranda. It's another David, but he doesn't have his camera on. So I guess he'll be just joining us. And Dwayne, I see you don't have your camera on either. Let's see. Ken and Lori Heinrichs, glad to have you here. And Bob Mangrum, glad you could join us. It's a long ways for you to come in. We're glad you're here. A couple of things that I wanted to go over with you guys as far as announcements and things to talk about. If you guys got your email in, you notice that we've got some good stuff to talk about today. One of which is the Gateway NMRAX Gateway Convention starting tomorrow. It is going to be a week full of great information. Speed, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, can you kind of give us a rundown on several things that people might want to highlight and look at, and how the whole convention thing is set up?
Right now? Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you really well, Speed.
3, 2.
Try to still not hearing you, Speed.
Not at all.
I can hear you, Speed, but it's really soft.
He's swaying. Wait just a minute here, so we'll do that.
How about now?
A little bit better.
Man, technology is awful.
Come on up a little bit more with your volume, Speed.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Tell us all about it.
Okay, so the NMRAX is presenting Gateway X in honor of the St. Louis Gateway Convention. So you all already took the week off to go to St. Louis. So now we're all going to ask that you sit at home and watch your TV on YouTube or go to Facebook on your computer. So you can also ask some questions. We have Sunday coming up tomorrow, kind of as a beginner. Your first layout and a peek at mine is the topic. Of course, we don't have a lot of beginner people giving clinics because they feel that they are still beginners. So you might see a few layouts that is more on the advanced side, but that's what beginners need to see as well. Monday, we have what do you need to build your layout? I believe David Hager is online here. He's giving us a clinic about 3D drawings. Mike Corley is going to do rooftop details. Mike Ross is going to do tree building. Mike Walter is going to do resistance soldering. Dwayne is doing what it takes to make a model great. So thank you, Division 1 and half of 3. On Tuesday, we have what do you run on your layout? Rolling stock and cars. Not too many new clinics. but still a few good ones. Nothing from us, but Paul Hobbs from New Zealand is a really good clinician. I always love listening to his stories. He's been involved in the conventions for the last 35 years, I believe. Then on Wednesday is how do you design your layout? So kind of on the LD6 side, Jerry Hoverson will give a clinic on planning your layout. Gordy himself will do a clinic for us. And at the end of the day, we will have Joe Fugate from Model Railroad Hobbyist doing the TOMA one module approach, I guess, idea. On Thursday, we have to do paint and weathering. Otto Vondrak is going to tell us about the history of railroad model craftsmen. We have Mr. Art Fahey from Bar Mills Model Works. And if you've never met that gentleman, he does not stop talking. So the stories that he tells is just amazing. The Friday is the Technology and Electronics Day. We will have quite a few nice ones. There's also a few introductory Arduino ones. If you've missed the Division 3 Arduino series, then here's your chance to catch up. We even have Pat McCarthy, Mr. Bruce Bretarka, Mr. DCC, and even, I believe, Pete is online here. Pete Steinman. Thank you. And the other 3 clinics are also awesome. Saturday is OPSIG Day, where we will have Carlton Brown from San Antonio showing us the RFID stuff, some block signals by Dwight, a really good building craftsman kits by Ron Poidomani, Tony Cook of a ski train, Chris Adams is famous, Greg McComas, which lives in your guys' area, will show us the ops on the Michigan Interstate St. Clair Division. Mr. Chuck Lind will give us a Longleaf Lumber Company clinic. And at the end of the day, we will have Mike showing us about the 2023 convention and Mr. Chris Palermo showing us the 2021 convention. So 15 hours every day. Like I said, you took the week off, so why not? And please remember to ask questions during these clinics because it's really hard to fill the last 10 minutes if nobody asks questions. And yes, I can come up with some questions, but they're all biased to being at the bottom of the helix, being from Africa. You know, make it local, ask your questions.
Thanks, Speed. We appreciate you giving us that rundown. Guys, as far as our clinic goes for our flat cars and starting to build those from scratch, unfortunately, we have got all the parts. Everybody's packets are put together with all of the individual parts that we have gotten for that. I'm gonna talk to Mike Corley and get him to put a parts list on the website so that if you weren't able to get in on the clinic early and you would like to get your own parts, then we'll go ahead and let you, we'll get you an opportunity to buy your own parts and participate in the clinic. I want to thank Joe Leising. He came over to the house and separated everybody's parts for the flat car clinic. The wood, the trucks, wire, everything you're going to need for this is all separated out into an individual packet with your name on it so that we just go in whenever we do finally come back together and meet and pass those out individually. And everybody in D1 has already paid for them. D3 is a different situation, and those packets are going to be passed off to Donna and for the people that signed up on that. As far as meeting face to face, I had planned on trying to get us back face to face next month. But with the numbers changing like they are and with our demographic being what it is, I personally right now don't think that's prudent. I would rather err on the side of conservatism and be able to come into having face-to-face meetings when we are comfortable doing that. Mask, all that kind of stuff is fine. I get it. But when we do these clinics, we're going to be shoulder to shoulder, and there's no way that it's probably going to be able to be participating with social distancing on that. So we are not going to be starting our face-to-face meetings until the fall sometime. My wife works for a very, very large company, and she was told by her president, CEO of her company, that they are not even considering going back into an office environment until sometime next year, and it will be maybe sometime in the first quarter. So she's working from home indefinitely right now. So that, all that being said, it's I don't think it would be prudent for us to have face-to-face meetings. Our division was one of the first ones that stopped doing face-to-face meetings. We are also one of the first divisions to start doing these meetings like this. It's something that that I feel like that our leadership has shown through to the rest of the organization, nationally and internationally, and I hope you all agree. We've had some very nice comments from people all around the world about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and taking a lead from us to do that as well. So wanted to let you guys know that, and also that David Crumpton. Let's see here. David, are you out here?
Here, Mike.
Wave to me, Dave. Where are you?
Right here. Right in front of the Texas Special, Mike.
You know, I'm looking and I don't see you, but I know you're here. Wait a
Here
minute.
I am.
There you are. Gotcha.
That's
All
right.
right. Thank you. Thank you. You're right up there. So that's great. David, we won't be coming back to the clubhouse, but you and I can talk about that at a separate conversation. So I do have something. I want to call on Chris Galvin. Chris, I'm going to let you share the screen here, and let's see.
Hopefully
I'm
it'll
going to let
be able to do this.
Chris and the folks at the Texas Western the other day. David, tell everybody a little bit about what you guys were able to do on Wednesday afternoon, if you would.
Cool.
And then Chris has got the video that he's going to show on his screen. He's going to share his screen with everybody, and we're going to do that. So.
Sure. A little background. The BNSF signal area, with the help of Mike Armstrong, donated a signal and crossbuck assembly to us. And we've had that in storage for about 2 months while we got the concrete bases poured. We've got this signal that you're seeing unloading now by the city of Forest Hill. And we have another signal that was acquired a couple of years ago that's just being rehabbed. So you see the base in the picture there, that's base number 1 that was poured. And so the city of Forest Hill was kind enough to loan us their, with some of their workers, a front end loader to pick up that signal and bring it over to the pad and set it down. You're seeing some video shot by Chris Galvin and his sweet little granddaughter. She was a big help. And we had about a half a dozen or so guys from the Texas Western there that day to help place it. And you're going to see the signal come off the trailer. That is Daryl Cowell's truck. The trailer was loaned to us by Jerry Fussel's daughter and son-in-law. Farm and property for about the last 2 months after the BNSF finally said, you guys need to come get it and clear out some space for us. So we picked it up and put it down there temporarily. Anyway, see, we're having some trouble with the video, but what you would see in the video when Chris gets it back up is the signal assembly being set on the concrete base and bolted down by several of the club members. So it is installed. In the next couple of weeks, we have conduit to run over to a piece of conduit that's coming out of the bottom of the base, where we will run electrical over to that signal. And there's a good picture of the group that was there to put it in place. But that signal will be electrified and will flash just like a normal signal would flash. And we're either going to have it on its own switch, or we're going to tie it in to the club main lighting, so that when we turn on the club lighting, that signal automatically comes on to kind of designate, hey, we're here, come see us. So that's what's going on with the signal.
Chris,
And
do you have any shots that are after the install, just single pictures?
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'd also think that tying it into the club lighting and flashing would be a good idea. That's almost like the hot now sign on a Krispy Kreme donut store.
Yeah,
It's like a calling card for mob railroader guys.
And Jason Jason's joining us from Birmingham.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all have
Alabama,
Krispy Kremes
and
in.
you're in the heart of Krispy Kreme country over there. So yeah, we understand.
Do you guys have them over there?
Yes.
A few, but not a lot.
Okay, gotcha.
There's probably 10 of them around the Metroplex somewhere, maybe 20. I'm not sure exactly, but there's the closest one to us, or to where I'm sitting. I think there's about 4 in Fort Worth area. Is that about right, guys? I know there's one in Watauga, and I don't know where else there's one. There was one that was over on the east side, over around Grapevine. Yeah, there's one in Grapevine. Yeah, that's right, Kevin. So yeah.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
And everybody, there's Chris has posted several really nice pictures on our Facebook page. So if you go, for those of you that got Facebook, you can go in and see some shots and photographs of the signal once it's up. He's got some nice pictures there.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I don't know why I can't find you something, but
Don't worry about it, Chris. It's all good, man. It's all good. Dwayne is having a little bit of trouble with his video. Speed, if you can kind of work with him. I don't know if you are or not. Yeah, it looks like you are. You're gone offline a little bit there, Speed. So Speed's probably working with Dwayne to try to help him get his himself back in. He's probably he's logged out and coming back in. Dr. Tom, it's great to see you out coming in with us from West Texas. Thanks for joining us. If you would, guys, Mike Ross and David Crumpton are trying to take roll and keep a list of who all's joined us here. Somebody just had their name as iPad, and I'm not sure who that is. But he's taking a drink of his coffee right now. Who is that there, please, sir?
Mike Baker.
Mike
Baker.
Okay. Mike, are you
Baker.
from D5?
No, I'm from this region.
Oh, you're from our
division.
Division? Okay, great.
Yes.
I apologize for not knowing you. That's my mistake, and I apologize.
That's fine.
So glad you're here.
I'm hit or miss in the meetings.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Pete, you're putting stuff in there on your camera, and it's got everybody distracted over here trying to figure out what you're doing with your stuff over there, Pete. Pete's getting ready.
I am actually setting up for my next 2 Zoom meetings today. I will get out of there.
That's exactly what I figured you were doing. He's a busy guy. He is the moderator of several Facebook groups, but he's also doing he's he's also doing gateway stuff, and he's also working on about you'll have 3 meetings today. Isn't that right, Pete?
That is correct. Yes, we have this one, which thank you for inviting me to. We have one James Knabb and I are doing, and the European division and a bunch of other divisions are involved. And the final one is one that we're doing with the San Diego division of the PSR, where I'm going to do a very quick abbreviated weathering clinic. So that's my day. Luckily, the wife's out of town, so I can spread out, make a big mess, and here we are.
Just make sure you get your pet out, get the dog out in between those meetings, because that dog's going to come to priority there.
She's fed. She's got the door open. She can take her sun bath. We're all good.
There you go. There you go. Pete joining us. Literally, guys, we are almost worldwide here. Well, I guess we are worldwide. Gerald Mabry, wave to everybody. There he is over there. Gerald's in Kuwait City. Pete's in San Diego. We've got, let's see, Jason Parham is in Birmingham, Alabama. I mean, literally, we've got stuff all around the world. So we're really glad to see everybody else coming in here.
Hey, Mike, I don't know if anybody else had problems or not, but the link on your email didn't work for me. And after 10 or 15 minutes of fooling around with it, I was able to type in the meeting ID and the password that you had put on the email. But the link, I tried it several times, and the response was it doesn't work. So did anybody else have that problem?
I'm sorry you had problems, Jim. If anybody else had problems with that link, raise your hand, please. Okay. I don't know why. I copied it straight off of the invite and posted it into the email that we sent out to everybody. So,
well, I got here, but it was an uphill struggle.
Okay, I understand. And now the one that you should have been clicking on, or the link you should have been used, was from the email that I sent out on Thursday. Not Chris Galvin's email.
No, well, the one I was looking at was Friday.
Yeah, that was Chris Galvin's.
Okay.
Chris, you're the one that messed everybody up. I'm just going to dump it on you. It's all your fault, Chris.
I'm sure I'll be the talk of the NMRA before long.
Now, Chris does a great job for us, and we're really happy with it. And by the way, if you enjoyed the newsletter this month, give a big thumbs up to Chris Galvin. He does our newsletter every single month and does an outstanding job. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, Mike.
Let's see. Dwayne, are you back yet? I do not see Dwayne back, because I was going to let him talk about some AP stuff. Let me just give you a little rundown. Big thanks to Daryl Cowles. On Wednesday, he and I went over to Mike Ross's place, and we judged Mike Ross's buildings. Mike completed that particular segment and turned his paperwork in for his AP certificate on structures. Mike, what does that give you? Six?
Yes, sir, I think 6, and I wanted the chance to publicly thank you and Daryl for masking up and coming over and maintaining distance and doing the structures, and hats off to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. And Daryl, I thank you as well for jumping in there. Bruce Petrarca was scheduled to come over from Phoenix and spend the week over here starting on Monday afternoon, and he was spending the week with me. And we had an entire week full of layout tours and things that we were going to be doing, and he unfortunately did not feel comfortable with flying and COVID and everything like that, so he didn't make that trip. He postponed that trip until later. We were going to go see some David Grimes layout. Thank you, David. Appreciate your hospitality, but we will reserve that for another time. We were going to see Mike Ross's and judge his structures at the same time, but when he canceled that trip, then Daryl was very kind and was able to step in, and we got Mike's stuff judged. Mike, I wanna go ahead and give you a heads up on something. If you would fill out the paperwork for your golden spike and turn that in. You can turn it in now because Daryl and I have both witnessed your layout, and you have accomplished all the things for your golden spike. So all you got to do is send me the paperwork. It's done. But the key on that is you've got to turn in your paperwork before you finish your MMR, because once you get your MMR, you're not eligible for the golden spike anymore. So if you would, go ahead and do that now before you complete your 7th certificate. And so it's not going to be long before we're going to be congratulating Mike on becoming an MMR. And that's another good deal right there. I still don't see Dwayne, and he's having problems getting logged in with his camera and his audio. So I'm not exactly what's going on here. And did Speed drop out too? I don't see Speed here any longer. So
I think Speed dropped out. I've been monitoring.
yeah, I think Speed dropped out, and he's let me see here. I got Dave Griffith is joining us. There comes Speed back. Let's see here. Dave, I'm sorry you were in the waiting room for so long. I apologize, Dave.
No problem.
And it's kind of difficult whenever you're trying to do the meeting and admit everybody and do everything. Speed, did we get Dwayne hooked back up? What's going on over there with that? Hello, Speed.
Where's Dwayne?
That Dwayne is having problems with OBS, and he's having a hard time getting cameras and sound hooked up. If you can give him a call and see if you can get him hooked up, because we need him to talk about the AP program and some stuff like that, if you don't mind. See if we can get him done there. We've been making some progress on the 2023 convention. I wanted to give you a little bit of update on that. You'll also be seeing a presentation of that. For those of you who haven't seen our video on the 2023 convention, if you would, you might want to join us on Saturday evening on the Gateway X, either on YouTube or on Facebook, as Speed mentioned earlier. I think it's like at 4 in the afternoon on Saturday Central Time, and you'll be able to see the video that we put together. And Dave Cranda did an outstanding job of building this video and putting this whole thing together. Thank you again, David, for your work on that. The video is absolutely par excellence. It's amazing. And right after our presentation, the folks in the 2021 convention in Santa Clara are going to do a PowerPoint presentation. I would not want to be them after our video. I'm just going to let you know that it's going to be something that's going to blow their socks off. And I will tell you right now that for Santa Clara, they are planning no pre-registration for the convention. If you want to go, the only way you can sign up is at the convention. I don't know why they're doing that. I'm just saying that's their plan. So you'll find out more about it if you watch their presentation on Saturday, a week from today. They're going to be talking about that. So anyway, let's see here. We still don't have Dwayne back. I think
Is that YouTube at 4 o'clock this afternoon?
no, sir. A week from today.
A week from today at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's correct. That's
Good,
correct. All right. Jeff, do you have anything you'd like to talk to us and going on with regional stuff?
Regional, no, there's nothing really happening region-wise right now other than trying to figure out how to get the Tulsa convention going. I don't know if Mark Lachey is on or not, but he could tell you that.
Mark is not. He's not here.
But the contest room, which I and Ray Byer are co-chairs for, we're going to have all of the LSR normal categories. So get your models ready, guys. I mean, it's going to be in Tulsa, and it should be fun. There's going to be plaques for the first 3 places. And like I said, all of the LSR categories are going to be available to be modeled. So, because you're never really sure, since we're doing a joint convention, exactly what the modeling categories are. But we had the meeting Thursday night, and Thursday night, that's what was decided. There will be a couple of additional specialty categories. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head.
I can give you that.
There he is. He is back.
Yeah.
Dwayne has returned.
That's what happens when you sit in the entry room waiting for somebody to let you back into the meeting for 10 minutes.
Hey, I apologize to everybody while you were off. It's not my fault that you didn't have your stuff together the first go around. All right. So.
Been fighting these cameras for 20 minutes.
Feel your pain. I still haven't gotten the PowerPoint thing to play music prior to the meeting starting and getting it working.
That's
yet.
okay.
So,
that's the last damn thing we need is that stupid thing playing music.
Hey. What are you gonna talk about the contest room?
Yes, they have they do passes as well. We used to do passes, but we've kind of gotten away from that one. But they only have one specialty award that I recall, and it was the Light Iron Award. It's given out to it's a sponsored award, kind of like we have with the Bob Clark Award, and it is given out by a couple of individuals for the best model that captures the spirit of narrow gauge.
Okay. What is a pass?
I mean, what is a pass? As in, I show you this card, I get to ride your railroad for free. Pass.
Okay. And so if we wanted to participate in that and we have railroads, are we supposed to make our passes? The examples thereof, since there's a lot of folks who are not familiar with that. Can you fill in some holes for us, please?
You can either bring bring an existing pass from a railroad, hopefully something that is a little on the rare side. If you are one of the few proud holders of a solid silver filigreed Rio Grande Southern pass that's worth $14,000 or $15,000, I suggest leaving that home in your safe. But if you've got a pass for a railroad that you like, bring that along. If you model your own railroad, make up your own pass, bring it and enter it.
Okay, so this is something that is a contest category, not something for exchanging with other people like
Correct.
a tax trade.
Right. These are not trading. This is a contest category. First, second, and third will be awarded. How that's going to be judged, I haven't a clue.
I was going to say, what's the story on that? How's it working? So
Yeah, I don't know. That's something they wanted to put in. It's something we quit doing because nobody would enter it. So, but evidently they still do. They still get quite a few of them up there. So it's going to be part of the contest.
So, Dwayne, I'll tell you what, this is really a Jeff question because Jeff's in charge of the contest room, and while you did it for a long time.
Yeah, I'm just an advisor.
It's Jeff's thing now. So, Jeff, would you do us a favor and run down some of the categories that are out there that are some of the lesser known categories? I mean, we all know that there's online structures, offline structures.
I don't have a list in front of me. It'd take me 10 minutes to go and find it, but it's the normal categories that we normally see. You can probably get some of the information off of the website. But like I said, I do not have a list in front of me right now that lists all of them. Although I have a document in one of my files that lists all of them. But I don't normally pay attention to it. And that's not normally a topic that I really go into. But you got categories on a tree. If you want to build a tree, which you should know about.
I do.
And you have your online structures, your offline structures. You got your maintenance of ways cars. You got your freight cars. You got your flat cars. You got your box cars. You've got engines, steam engines, diesels. You got bridges. You got so I already did online and offline structures. So you got your dioramas. And keep in mind that any structure that is submitted that beyond the drip line has scenery will become a diorama. Because the rule is that you cannot have scenery that extends beyond the drip line of whatever structure or building that you're building.
That is a thing that bit me in a story that I can tell. I built a tree house. I put it in a tree. What's a tree house if there's not a tree to put it in? It's nothing. But then the tree extended the drip line over the tree house, so therefore it was put in as a diorama, and I didn't get to enter it as a structure. So it didn't place well in dioramas. So I was kind of in a catch-22 on that one, but I learned the hard way on that one. Don't put any scenery outside the drip line of the building, or else it goes into a diorama category.
Yeah,
Mike, for those of us who judged it, I want you to know we enjoyed the miniature copies of Playboy in there.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that. I worked really hard on getting those things scaled down for you. Dwayne, you were going to say something?
Yeah, the best advice is if you're going to enter something as a structure, put no scenery on it at all. I mean, trying to put a straight edge up against the edge of that roof and scenic up to it and stop is just an utter waste of time. It's going to be hard for you to blend it in once you plan it on the layout anyway. Just don't put scenery on it unless you want to make it a display. And then if you do, you better go whole hog on it. That's always a very tough category, and it's always if you come away with a win on that one, you've really done something special.
Yeah, as a person,
I'm showing you guys the tree house now. I just happen to have it. I used it in the clinic the other day, and it's sitting right there. So if you look really close, there in the top of the tree house next to the scale HO scale checkerboard and checkers that's in there, and the scale beer bottles that I used, a toothpick chalked into a Dremel, and a number 11 blade as a lathe, and turned my own beer bottles for that. You'll see the Playboy sitting right there if you get your magnifying glass out. So Jeff, we're glad you were able to enjoy those.
That's okay. I remember being 11 and 12 at one time or another. So
That's it.
And it works well. But on what Dwayne brought out, and Dwayne can attest to this because he was the one who called me out on it. I entered a structure which was basically a water tank, and as everybody knows, I like using the ground goop, and that's literally all I had. I had the water tank and the ground, and the base was covered with ground goop, and that's it. No weeds, no grass, no nothing. But Dwayne informed me that that would be a diorama, and I knew that wasn't going to work. So I spent the next hour and a half with a Dremel and grinding off all the ground goop.
Yep, that's it. So understand, guys, the categories are passenger cars, cabooses, freight cars, maintenance away cars. There's traction and other for locomotives. There's steam locomotives, diesel locomotives, online and offline structures, best tree All of these things are listed on the NMRA website. You
LSR
can see
website.
that. I'm sorry.
LSR website.
I mean, sorry, LSR website. Thanks, Dwayne. I'm getting my hierarchy out of whack there. But the LSR website under contest, and you can see all the different categories there. And then there's the photo categories as well that we'll be having there. One of the categories that hardly ever anybody enters in the contest for our region is the architectural category, where you design your building and then build it architecturally from plans.
But Mike, you can't enter that one. That's not one that you actually intentionally.
Oh, okay. It's a structure, and then it just qualifies one way or the other.
Correct.
Right?
As the guys in charge of the contest room will go through, and what we'll do is anything when you enter your model, one of the things on the form that you check is whether or not it's scratch built or not. And we go through and look at all the scratch built structures and pick whichever one really, if you were to build it for real, which one of these would work the best, which has the most intricate design, things like that. And then that one's picked by the judges. It's not something that's you can actually enter. And the tree's the same way. We just kind of go around the room, and if somebody's got a good tree, we give it that year. If they don't, we don't.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yep.
By the way, while you were out, we talked about Mike Ross turning in his paperwork for the AP, so I was going to transition to that. And I also mentioned that he also needs to get his golden spike, and I think he's going to do that. So
excellent. Yeah, definitely something needs to be done. Which, by the way, Mike, that reminds me of something. Let me hand you this.
Okay, thanks, Drain. I appreciate it.
Mike earned his official.
So that is number 9 of the 11 guys. Jump on in there and get some more paperwork turned in. Mr. Packer, who's on here, has got all 11. And he is in something that found out talking to Dwayne and Dwayne's dad. There's something in the neighborhood of about 20 people worldwide in the history of the NMRA that's got all 11. And we've got one sitting right here on our call with us. Thank you, Mr. Packer. Good job. Good job on that. So, let's see. Speed. Also, Dwayne, didn't he?
Yes. I forgot Speed's on the call. Yeah, Speed also earned his official this year too. So he is one step closer. Unfortunately, now this is something that has gotten to several people. It got my dad. It's gotten Speed as well. As you're working on the achievement program, you have to have 7 of them, but there are 4 categories involved, and you have to have 1 out of each of the 4. So the way this one's ended up working out, because of the way that the ones that Speed has earned, he's going to end up being like my dad was. He won't actually get his MMR until he hits number 8 because he's missing 1 out of the other categories. So what you working on next, Speed? Cars?
He's nodding yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Cars and structures.
There we go. There we go. So, well, what are you doing on this meeting? Get to work.
We have a convention to run next week.
By the way, I want to ask, is he still on the call? MHM Jr.
Not that one. Someone told me.
You did?
That's,
okay.
That's Nolan Richards from number 3.
Got it. Got it. Oh, there you are. Okay, gotcha.
Who's David and who's Joseph? Just plain.
David and Joseph. David doesn't have his camera on.
Yeah.
And then we've got Joseph. If you could write your names in the group chat area there, guys, so that we could know who you are. and put you on our roster as having attended. All right. Well, guys, does anybody else have any questions, any comments before we get into our I guess, for lack of a better term, bull session on railroads? If you do, go ahead and just kind of speak up a little bit. Chris, what do you got?
I have a quick looking for a source for filing down these the flash off these 3D cars that were printed out. I was just going to use like some files, but it's not going real quickly for me. Does Dwayne or do you, Mike, have a tip as to
what's it printed in? Is it ABS?
It come from you. It's the your 3D.
Oh, those are those cars. Okay, that's ABS, and I use a method on the stuff that I'm doing. And I just printed some trucks and sent to Pat McCarthy the other day. Those normally what I do is I will take a knife. This is a little bit. It's a little bit more than a. Let me put it over here where you can see it a little bit better.
Yeah, number 11 or something, or
no, it's not. I'm going to put a number 11 over here, and you'll see the difference. Let me transition to this screen over here, and let's see. So this one is a knife blade right here. That's this is the number 11. It's considerably thicker. It's more heavy duty. It's like a construction knife, if you will. And you can get them at art stores or whatever. It's got a bigger handle. When we sell printers, this is part of your owner's kit. And so I don't know exactly where the company gets those blades and things like that, but I'm sure they're readily available to.
And would you put that in a vise or something? I mean, it seems like a big object for a small little HO.
Okay, so what I do is, no, I just hold it. And if I were, I mean, this is plaster, but if I just hold it and just carve around it, you know, whatever I'm doing, and get the flash off, the extra stuff off of it. And then from there, I will take this product, and let me go back to where I was again. This is a product called Plastaweld. You can get it at Hobby Lobby, and it's from Flexifile. Now, this is basically, it's what it is methylene chloride, all right, which is a lesser version of
MEK.
MEK. Thanks, Dwayne. I was having a hard time coming up with my letters. And what this does, it's a plastic weld, and I just kind of lucked onto this, Chris. But if you stop and think about it, a plastic weld melts the plastic together, so it melts it a little bit. What I do is I'll take a brush, just a regular brush like this, dip it in the Plastaweld, and then paint the surface of the model that's 3D printed, and leave this stuff on the surface. And what it does is it smooths it out, rather than it actually kind of melts it and melts that top layer. And that's what I've done. Speed, what have you done to clean your stuff up? You don't use this method. Some people use an acetone bath, where they will take acetone, like ladies that they use on their fingernail polish remover, and they will take another container, soak a paper towel or something in acetone, put it in the bottom of a plastic container, put another container on top of that, a smaller one in there, put your model in there, and then seal it over and let those acetate fumes come over the top and makes that plastic kind of soften up. And
I guess how do you then resist it off the part you don't want to melt? Would you?
Well, it's just gonna smooth out everything. You're not gonna be able. I mean,
you can't really control it.
No. You can't control it like you can with the brush thing that I do.
Acetone's a good thing to have in your arsenal anyway, because that's what you use to get when you glue your fingers together.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
the other. Yeah. So it's a good thing to have in your arsenal anyway.
But Chris, to answer your question, I file it. I'll use emery boards to smooth it out, and use finer grit, sandpaper and stuff. Now there is a product. Dwayne, did you get that little file, that little circular file? Do you have one of those?
Circular file. The sander?
Sander thing.
Yes, I do.
Let's show that if you don't mind.
Give me a second. I got to figure out what I did with it.
Okay.
I rearranged my desk a little bit.
This is a product that Dwayne saw at the Narragage show. Was it last year or the year before?
It's been out for a couple of years, but I just got it last year.
It is not a cheap tool, but it is very beneficial. And it's a rotary sander that has got a plate or a bed to it. And you can take that rotary or the bed and make an angle on it, or square, and make a 90, a 45, a 60, whatever you want. And then the sanding disc has got a handle on it, and you can spin it and just hold your piece on there, and it will sand it to a square or to an angle. Great for working on buildings and parts. To get them absolutely, if you're looking at trying to put an angle on a peak on a roof, man, you can get it exact where the parts just come to a point.
Okay, I'm just going to pass that cost on to Jay Waters. So he's we're trying to get these cars, sanded down
exactly.
The plant. So
yeah, as far as those cars are concerned, I'm thinking that the best thing to do on that is just to use some emery paper, sandpaper, really fine grit sandpaper, and try to do that. Jay, I've got your.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've got those. I can find them here. What I do with? Oh, here they are. This is something that I've printed up for Jay. Let me get this back over here and transition this. These are windows for a plant that he's doing, industrial plant, the General Motors plant in Arlington in 1960. What, Jay? 62. And back then they called it the Bop plant because they made Buicks, Oldsmobiles, and Pontiacs. So they lovingly called it the Bop plant because of those, taking the letters from all three of those things. But Jay, when we were talking last night, these windows right here, and I was asking you about the size of them. This window is 5 scale feet. If you look at it right there.
There is no way that's HO scale. That window should be about 3/4 of an inch across.
Okay. Well, 5 scale feet is right there. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but the 5 is the number that's right.
Close, Mike.
No,
there.
The overall, that entire window should be 5 feet.
Oh, okay. The frame should be 5 feet.
The whole window.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll have to resize it. That's not a problem. We can make that done. We can do that. I can just scale it down and we'll just make it what it is.
Yeah, that overall frame should be a 5 by 5 HO scale, so about 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch.
And see, I think when Colton made those drawings, he was talking about this right here being 5 instead of this whole thing being 5. And so that was where we got our
4
wires.
times too big, basically.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Spinal Tap, but there's you're not going as long as you don't 3D print a Stonehenge monument in there, you'll be all right.
All right, bud.
Now
All
we
right.
gotta do it.
Let's see here. Anybody else have other questions?
I do, Mike.
Okay, go ahead, David. I saw David's hand first, Daryl. Sorry.
To the group, I've modeled an asphalt road using the Woodland Scenics blacktop material that you paint on to a plaster surface. And according to the instructions from Woodland Scenics, you take a fine grit sandpaper and run it over to fade it, and then you take pencil shavings and take that and rub it in and streak it to make it look worn and what have you. It looks okay. I would like for it to look more faded than what it does. So has anybody ever done an asphalt road that really looks like an older asphalt road and it's not so dark? Even sanding the Woodland Scenics hasn't faded it as much as I wanted it to fade. So anybody got any tips?
Stone and Mineral.
I was going to call on you, Jeff Palmer.
Arizona Stone and Mineral. It comes as a powder. You mix it with white glue. You lay it down. It'll start off being fairly, not a black, but a very dark gray. You sand that, it lightens up great. I went back, and you can use a pencil. I used a magic marker to put all of the tar places where it's been patched and where they go through and they patch all that kind of stuff. But that's what I use. I don't. Most of the other stuff is plastic. Has a plastic base, an acrylic base, and it just shines too much. With the Arizona Stone and Mineral,
you can get that. You can get that product at discount. That's where we got it. And David, Jeff put that same asphalt product on my layout for his scenery stuff that he was working on, and I will send you pictures of the finished asphalt road after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Not a problem.
Daryl,
Did you,
what you got, Daryl?
What kind of plaster did you use?
No plaster. It's hot wood glue, white glue.
For my base, it was just regular plaster, plastic poured.
All right.
Plaster
well,
poured.
Woodland Scenics makes that stuff called Smooth It.
Yep.
And it's designed to be used with that paint.
I've used Smooth It before.
And when I used the Smooth It with that black asphalt, it faded out pretty nice.
Did you? Okay.
So it might be the product underneath that's causing the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Daryl Cowles, what you got, bud?
We had an announcement we should have got in a little bit earlier. The YMR that meets at the Texas Western has been headed up by John Skiba for these years. John is wishing to step out. His son has aged out of the group and is going to be leaving for college and this, that, and the other. So John joined the club because Johnny liked trains. John never really had a giant modeling interest, but he did it because his son wanted to do that. So we are looking for anybody that would like to step in and be in charge of the YMR that meets at our club. We would really love to see somebody that can do that. Otherwise, this branch of the YMR may go away. So anybody that's interested in doing that, write to David Crumpton at cfo@twmrc.org and let them know that you have an interest in it, and we'll touch with John.
Thank you,
Daryl.
Yep.
Thank you, Daryl. David Hager.
I am taking paint off of an Atlas N-Scale Loco. Works great on the steel. I'm having a devil of a time getting it off the plastic.
Jeff, what is that product that you found at Hobby Lobby that is great for that paint removal?
Well, it depends on what kind of paint I'm removing, but most of the time I'm going to go with like mineral spirits or something like that to take it off, because it won't attack the plastic, I'm like I said, I'd almost have to look at it before I want to make a recommendation on what to do on a specific one. But the things you're going to use anytime for removal is going to be, it's going to have like either an acetone based kind of thing or an MEK. The problem is that both of those are going to melt plastic.
The only thing I've tried so far is 99% alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol. If it's not coming off with alcohol, then it's going to it becomes a lot tougher, and you just basically end up almost sanding it off, lightly sanding to get it off. Like I said, I can't see it, and so it's hard for me. I mean, I understand what you got, but there's an element in there of, see, you got windows in it. Those would have to come out before you do any chemicals. That's going to it'll just fog them up. But 99% alcohol won't take those decals off, huh? That says they're painted on, and therefore you're going to end up having to use a paint remover.
What I would suggest, chances are in a lot of the major manufacturers, they're not decals anymore. They're actually pad printed when they do the finish work at the plant. So they're not actual decals. So it's going to take a little bit more to get them off of there. Something you might try, and especially if you have access to an ultrasonic cleaner, like ladies use to clean their jewelry or some folks use to clean their dentures, a little bit of Pine Sol, straight Pine Sol, and take the window glass out of it. That's definitely a must. Jeff's dead on correct for that one. But take the glass out of it and then let that soak in Pine Sol. Pine Sol, most of the time, will get that paint to soften up, but you're talking 24 to 48 hours worth of soak, and then take an old toothbrush and scrub on it. If you've got an ultrasonic, that'll help speed the process.
Well, let me tell you about the precaution about Pine Sol. It will work, but wear some gloves, because I did that way back in high school. The first time I painted an engine shell, and my hands about a day later turned to complete plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely want. Yeah, anytime you work with any kind of chemicals of any shape, form, or fashion, you probably want to wear some gloves.
Are you just trying to take the lettering off, or you want to strip it bare?
I want to strip it. It's going to be a blue locomotive, and it's
isn't it brake fluid?
Brake fluid will work as well, and they sell a product over at Hobbytown USA. Charlie Kirk's used it with really good results, and it will strip it down to the plastic.
That's
but
the stuff I was talking about, Dwayne.
I don't know the name of it, though.
They sell that at discount as well.
Do they?
What's the name of it, David?
When all else fails, to use brake fluid.
Yeah. David, do you know the name of that product?
I can't remember. I know it's green.
Yep.
I can't remember. I tried to look it up here online here, but I can't find it. But you know what? If you go in and search hobby paint remover, there's about 1 million products here.
I built automotive brakes for years. I should know that. It takes the paint off everything.
Yep. Sure does.
Well, it does it okay. There's some manufacturers that paint. I mean, Kato. I tried to strip a couple of Kato diesels, and I used everything, including paint, including the brake fluid, and it just, you get down to the point you just say, heck with it.
This is an Arnold. I don't know.
Put a primer on it and it's fine, but some manufacturers use a paint that you just can't strip.
All right. Anybody else have a question? Let me look around the room here for just a second.
Hey, Mike, I found that sander.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead and show
this
that.
Is,
this is that sander that.
This is the Ultimation sander, and Mike, Jeff's got an article. Have they published that one yet, Jeff?
I have not seen it yet. But.
Okay, Jeff's got an article on this one that's really good. That's submitted to the MRH. But this is a really neat little guy. It is expensive. It's a couple $100. I mean, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. You better want to, do quite a bit of modeling with it. But it's really sturdy built. It is quite an impressive guy here. Whoops, let's flip that back.
Great part is the ability to control the amount you're sanding. Sometimes you just want to nick something to keep it get it in line or whatever.
Yeah.
And You don't want to just grind it down, but you just want to kind of nickel, and you can use it with the hand and just go back and forth with the on the hand portion of that crank.
Yeah,
and
see, it's got a full-on hand crank. If you're trying to do a lot of mill work here, and it's a very, very smooth. It's a full-on roller bearing. The whole thing's big, thick metal, so it's a good heavy piece. But the nice thing with this is right here on this end of the bed, that's a true 90. And then down here on this end, you've actually got where you can set whatever angle you need. And if anybody's ever cut stuff on a chopper, and if you start getting much thicker than about an HO scale 2x, you start to get a bit of blade deflection in the results that you get from the chopper, because it's the blade will start to flex, and what you end up with then is, instead of a true guillotine to cut, you end up with this kind of shape to it. So you always have to kind of sand that a little flat, and that's where this thing really excels, because one of the things that you can do with it is you can lay a board in here, and I've got one laying here, for example. So if I had just cut this board on my chopper, I could lay it in right here, and it's got a rubber ring around the wheel itself. You can come in here and just rock it back and forth, and it'll take that little blade deflection right out of there. But again, this thing is pretty pricey, and this little add-on piece here they call the repeater, it's an add-on. So it's a couple $100 for this piece of it, and it's another 70, 75 for this one, something like that. But if you're about to build a whole lot of buildings, you're starting your railroad from scratch, you got 4 or 5 trestles that you need to build, I could not recommend this tool highly enough. I mean, it is an amazing piece of equipment. When it first came out, Jeff and I both talked about it. We kind of went, no, a hand crank sander, really? But I'm here to tell you, after we saw it in action in Sacramento and got a chance to get our hands on it and play with it a little bit, I hollered at Jeff. He was standing behind me. I said, "You need to come see this. I'm about to buy one." And
I ran right over there. I wanted to see a fool in his money part ways.
Yeah, and he did, and it parted fast.
But the problem is, so did I.
Yeah.
I can see Daryl Cowell's mouth watering right now for that tool. He's a tool guy.
It is. Like I say, it's one of the best things I bought for the hobby in a while. I mean, it really is.
I've got a 12-inch sander.
Well, I've got one too, but I want to take a small little edge off, not eat the entire board.
Yeah, that 60 grit paper on that will square that right up.
And your finger and everything else.
Hey, Mike Mackey?
Yes, sir.
The name of that paint remover is Scale Coat 2.
Oh, that's
okay.
That's a different one.
That's
the one
a
at Hobby,
different one
yeah, the
than
one
what
at Hobby
I was talking
Towns
about. Yeah.
is a different brand than Scale
Yeah, this
Coat.
is the one I buy it at Discount Model Trains. It's called Scale Coat 2, and it comes in. It's kind of expensive. It's like $16 for a small bottle, but you can reuse it over and over and over. So I mean, it's it works better than alcohol.
Oh, Scale Coat is a paint line. So is this a specific like thinner? I mean, what does it have on there that identifies it as a paint remover?
It's called Scale Coat 2 Wash Away Paint Stripper.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say, because Scale Coat makes a whole line of paints.
Yeah. I know. I think it's the same company.
Okay.
But it's like I said, it comes in a I don't know, looks like a half a pint, maybe a pint bottle, and the product is green. It works great. I mean, I really I've had some good luck with it. But like I said, if all else fails, brake fluid, and if that doesn't work, just prime it.
Gerald, you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious to know where Dwayne bought that sander at.
I actually bought it from the folks at Fast Tracks that also own Mount Albert. They sell them through there. Jeff, can you get them directly from him, or is he selling them all through there?
Yeah, there is. If you go to ultimation.ca for Canada, you can get into the website for Al Collins. That's the person who builds the sander, and he has has licensed it, if you will, to Fast Tracks. And so if you go to the Fast Track website, which is handlaidtrack.com,
Yep.
You can get it off of there. But either way, you can, it all goes to Al Collins in Canada. But it is like I said, it was one of those tools that, just listening to the description of it, we, both Dwayne and I just shook our heads and saying, well, why would I want to spend that much for a sander?
It was kind of one of those, it's a solution in desperate search of a problem, it just.
And it was. But we, as we got into it and actually had a chance to work with it, what actually happens, Al Collins, the designer or builder and owner of the company that makes them, he was building some bridges. He needed to build some bridges. And so he needed a way to be able to actually make the same part over and over. If you ever built a detailed bridge, like any of those from the Hunter line, like maybe one of the snow sheds or the trestle bridges, and you're going to be building the same part over and over and over. And this is a great tool for creating exactly the same piece for each, like
trestle bents or something.
For any of the bents, that's good. I couldn't think of the word. Sorry. Thanks, Mike. For each of the bents or any of the parts of the bents, you can. This is the tool that did it. He said that was the whole reason that got him going to design it and build it. It was one of those things, a necessity, because like he said, he was going to build a Hunter line snow shed, and the snow shed had like 2,000 parts, of which 500 of them were the same thing, because it was all the bracing. So.
Yeah, if you've ever gone through a good sized Campbell kit or something like that and worked through putting rafter tails around the edge of your roof, where you're going to make 75 or 100 of the exact same little bitty part. For those of you who have done that, know what a gigantic pain that is. But with this little sander, you can get them fairly close. You can chop them and get them close, and then drop them on there with whatever angle it is you need, and just sand it down till it's right down on what you need. And it uses a readily available self-adhesive sanding disc that you can buy. Just about any automotive paint supply has them. Home Depot probably even has them. Most of the stuff Home Depot has is more of a Velcro type because it goes on like a wood sander. But they actually use a 3M automotive grade sanding disc.
All right, guys, if we don't have any more questions, I tell you what, if you do have some more questions, let's hold them until the end. We've got Eric Lewis that's joined us. Eric is an active member of the Union Pacific Railroad. Eric, can you have a video that you're going to throw up there so we can see your smiling face? Or we can unmute you and just let you talk to us. No video? Eric, hello. There he is. There he is. All right. How much time you got with us, Eric? Can't hear you. We're going to get into our program while Eric's getting his. Just speak up when you get your voice going there, Eric. But we're going to talk here and do some train talk here. I want to introduce Eric. He currently works for UP. Trapper John Kirkpatrick, wave to us, Trapper. Where are you? Right there. We've got Dwayne Richardson. Kevin Letty, where are you, Kevin? There you're back over on the other. There you go, right up there. And then myself. And we were going to have Terry Morris, but he's a little under the weather today. So just go ahead and start talking, Eric, whenever you can.
What am I? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Great. Good job. So
I was going to let you guys lead off.
We've got the whole idea here in. We just kind of did this because one day we were sitting around after or before a meeting, And the guys who work for the railroad just started swapping stories about first one thing then another that when we worked on the railroad. And so with that in mind, for a meeting sometime. So I just gathered some of the guys that are former railroaders here that I know about to kind of tell some stories. For instance, one time I was working for, and I'll just lead off here with a quick story. I was working in Houston for the SP, and there's in Houston there are probably 12 different yards that the switchmen have to know every single thing about down there. You're transferring from yard to yard. You're transferring from the satellite yards to Inglewood, which is it was at the time, the second largest railroad yard on the Southern Pacific Railroad. The West Colton yard in Los Angeles was the largest. In Inglewood down in Houston, there are 123 tracks in the yard, and you have to know the name and position of every single track to go to work down there. And the other thing is you bid jobs on a daily basis on whatever you think you can hold from a seniority standpoint. One time I was doing a transfer from Cheney Yard, which is about 18 miles away from Inglewood, transferring about 45 or 60 cars from Cheney back to Inglewood and dragging, and they were just a drag of cars from Cheney transferring, and one locomotive, no caboose. And at the throat of Inglewood, there are 3 main lines eastbound and 3 main lines in and out, basically. And the throat is handled by a tower operator that is controlling all the turnouts electronically. They tell you that they cannot throw a turnout underneath a moving train. It cannot happen. We're in the midst of dragging these cars from Cheney over there, get to Inglewood. We're about halfway into the yard, and all of a sudden we hear over the radio, Job 66, Job 66, shut it down, big hole it, shut it down. And big holing means for the locomotive engineer to actually throw the train into emergency. And when that happens, there is a possibility that you can cause a further derailment because all the wheels are basically going to start sliding at that point. It's something you want to try to avoid if you can. But what had happened was about half of our cut started tearing up the outbound throat to Inglewood Yard. And when I say tearing up, we had boxcars scattered across 6 tracks and digging up dirt and going nuts. The train master comes rolling up and sliding his vehicle up, wanting to know who the supervisor was. That was yours truly. He immediately said, why didn't you have somebody riding the rear end of the cut of these cars? I said, sir, this is a Cheney transfer. You didn't answer me. Why didn't you have somebody riding the rear end of this cut of cars? I said, sir, this is a Cheney transfer. You want me to have somebody hanging off the back end of a boxcar for 14 miles. Is that what you're telling me? Well, and he turned around and walked off, and we got an early quit that day. It took him about 6 days to get everything fixed finally back at the Inglewood Yard. So,
and now you know why he was a train master.
And there you go. Now you know why he's a train master. Talk to me, Eric. You got one before you have to leave. How long do you have with us?
Another 10, 15 minutes or so.
Okay. What kind of stories I know you've got a few.
We, well, piggybacking off derailment, I've cleaned up plenty of messes behind you transportation boys, so I've got some good ones.
Hey. If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have a job.
We were working on the Navasota sub, had a train that came out of Setagast there, which is the old UP yard that Chris shared an interlocker with the east end of Englewood right there in Houston. Departed north up the Palestine double main and came up to Navasota on its way through College Station. I think it was going all the way up to Davidson. We got a call about 8 a.m. We were already on duty saying, hey, we need you to head down to Magnolia. There's a train that's got a hot box, which is a hot journal. It was the bearings had burned out, and it's setting little fires along the way. The crew's supposed to stop and set it out in Stoneham, but we need you to go high rail and check for those fires. So we're on our way down, and we're just south of College Station, a little town called Milliken. We're just south of the siding there, heading down, and we see a train stopped, and one of the cars looked a little off, and so did some of the other cars behind it. Well, it was that same train. They never stopped. And those bearings burned off the axle completely, and it freewheeled around a curve off the Navasota River Bridge. First crossing it hit, it climbed, and they drug it for 2 miles before it went into emergency.
Oh, my gosh.
And it tore up pretty well. I mean, it fell in, so it cut all the ties all the way down. And then it hit a $1 million wild scanner. We've only got like 4 of them on the system, and it tore that thing to pieces. So,
wow.
And then the crew was supposed to stop and inspect on the first hot box, but they never did. So needless to say, they're no longer with the company. But they were setting fires all the way up and down that sub, and then derailed it there in Milliken.
Now, Eric, that's a 2-man crew now, right?
Correct. You'll occasionally have depending on the job, you may have a 3rd man. Depending if it's a longer local that's got work, if it's not a closed access local, meaning it can't clear up any of the industries entirely to do its work and open up the main line, then they'll put a 3rd man on there to expedite the switch move so they can get it in the clear somewhere else and keep traffic moving.
But basically what happened on that deal, if I'm reading you right, those guys just didn't want to get off and walk their train.
No, I think they were a Fort Worth crew, and they kept getting drag out assignments down in Houston. They were ready to get home. That was our story. So they said, just screw it, we're going to go, and literally take it till the wheels fall off. So
wow. And by the way, whenever I worked for the railroad, the crews back then, you had a engineer, sometimes a fireman, and then you had a conductor or a lead, and then a front end brakeman and rear end brakeman. So there were 3 guys on the crews when I was working, and that was even on road jobs. That was the way that the crews were set up then. So a lot of things have changed since then. Kevin, you got anything you can throw in there real quick? And then we'll come back to Eric and then Trapper. I know you've got a couple that I want to jump on with you.
Well, the one that comes to mind first is going back to 1977 when I had a summer brakeman job for the Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo Railway. And I had 3 student trips. And after that, I caught a train. I was on the extra board or spare board, as they call it up there.
Yeah.
It was an extra east that ran from Hamilton, Ontario to Welland and back, which was kind of a fun job. It was daylight. You went out and did your business and got back, and the sooner you got it done, the better. So it's kind of fun to work with a motivated crew to get out and do the work. But on my first trip, my conductor was a guy by the name of Gord Rivers, who was a really good guy to work with. And we had this process, and when we got to the yard at Welland, we ran through the receiving track and kicked the caboose over to the what they call cleaning tracks, where they clean boxcars out for reloading. And so me being the head end brakeman, my job was to drop off when we got to the east end of the yard, line up all the switches on the lead, then catch the rolling caboose and guide it to a joint, which, to do that, you got to, use the handbrake so that you don't slam it in. And so,
for those that don't know, he's talking about that they would cut off the caboose and let it and bottle the air on the rest of the train and let the caboose just roll while the rest of the train was pulled in. And so it's going to basically roll up by gravity, right, Kevin?
Well, just, inertia, because it was a flat yard. But, I had done that before, so I knew what he was talking about, but he didn't know that I understood it. So lined up all the switches, caught the caboose, made a couple turns on the wheel to take up the slack. And then the door of the caboose opened behind me. I was on the one platform. And here's Gord. I mean, he's an overweight guy. He's just sweating and out of breath and so forth. And I kind of looked at him. I kind of surprised. He goes, he's trying to ask me, he says, did you understand what I said by riding the caboose? And I says, yeah, I've already got the slack taken up on the handbrake. Why? He says, well, the last new guy I told that to, he rode the caboose all right, but he never touched the handbrake, slammed into the cars. And it was an older caboose. He managed to bend the center sill, and that pretty much was an early end to that caboose. It never was in service again, but it's kind of fun.
I'll tell you guys another caboose story along that line a little bit later. I'm going to give somebody else a chance to talk here. Eric, you got another story before you have to go? Did Eric leave? I think he did have to leave. He's catching a flight. He's actually in Colorado, and he's going to have to catch a flight back. Trapper, talk to us.
Well, remember, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes,
Wait
sir.
a minute. Here's Eric jumping back in here real quick.
All
There
right.
you are, Eric. I didn't know you'd had to jump off real quick. Go ahead and tell us another story here real quick, because I know you got to leave, Eric, and then we'll come back to you, Trapper. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, there he is. Old Trapper John. I've got some stories I heard about you from Martinez.
Oh, not David. Oh my gosh.
Eric, we can hear you. We just can't see you. Go ahead and tell us another
Oh,
story.
sorry. That thing dropped off on me. I don't know what happened.
That's all right.
Okay. Trying to think. I've got a bunch of them. I'm trying to find. We were down there in Houston on the Hardy Toll Road working on the Palestine double main, and we were needing to undercut a spot. That double main is concrete ties all the way down from Belt Junction at Hardy Toll Road all the way up to Old Town Spring, and then it goes back wood.
Runs right down through the middle of that toll road if you're not familiar with the area.
And so we were sent out there to undercut a mud spot. Basically, mud gets in there and it deteriorates the ties and creates surface issues. You have to put a slow order out. And undercutting is basically a process where you just take a blade on a track hoe or a bucket on a backhoe. A blade on a track hoe or a bucket on a backhoe. Dig it out, clean it out, put fresh rock in there, and then they send the tamper and regulator through to clean it up. Well, we were out there with a big old Hitachi track hoe blade, about as long as my F-250 on it to cut, and had a backhoe trench away the shoulder of the ballast and started putting the blade in there. And that part on the Hardy Toll Road where it's right in the middle, there are barricades on either side, but the main line is elevated above those barricades, and we didn't take that into account. And we just cranked that blade up and it starts kicking rock out. Next thing we know, we're hearing car horns and we're not sure what's going on. Well, we're launching ballast out into Hardy Toll Road at cars going 65.
Oh.
But needless to say, we shut that down, went and got some plywood. And the problem was because of how we had to set it, we had to stand behind the plywood to hold the plywood up. Otherwise, the ballast would just tip the plywood off into the toll road. So that was not one of our finer moments, but
And I'm sure OSHA probably would not have approved of the way y'all were doing that if given the opportunity.
You say that again?
I said I'm sure OSHA probably would not have approved of that technique if they've given the opportunity to review it. You know.
Unfortunately, we're not governed by OSHA. It's FRA, which I don't know who's worse, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, take your pick.
Yeah, take your pick. Okay, Trapper, you're up.
I remember when I just became a conductor, we had to go get a train that ran out of time at Grandview. And it had a foreign caboose on it, which was future UP caboose. And we came there. I didn't have a radio on the rear end. And I told my engineer, it was a little short train, I told my engineer we're headed toward Fort Worth. Back then it was called Centennial Yard.
Yeah.
And we were headed that way. So I told my engineer, I said, I'm going to throw a fusee when I'm about 2 car lengths from the switch, and I'll let you know when I get off, and I'm going to line the switch behind, and then I'll throw another fuse, and you can take off. Well,
So that everybody knows, a fusee is a flare. That's railroad term for a flare, and they normally are red fusees, and you typically you set them out to stop a train in dark territory from coming up on you. But in railroads, a lot of times they will use those fusees for signaling and things like that, so that people, because you can see them and they put off a large amount of light. And if you want to put them out, rather than just let them burn for 10 minutes, you just pop them on the ground and they'll go right out. So Trapper, I'm sorry, I just wanted to fill that in for everybody.
I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Eric and I are pretty much the only ones that know what we're talking about on that part of it. But I threw the first fusee up, and my brakeman was in the caboose, and he was new. He'd been there about 6 months, and I could hear my train, the engineer, bringing the slack in on to the engine, so he could keep us slowed down. And when I got to the point where I was going to let the fusee go to tell him highball, and you want to explain what highball means?
Sure, that means give it the gas and get on out of here.
Get out of there. That's right. And before I could do that, when he gathered slack, he forgot, or he tried to judge it wrong, or tried to judge it right, and he missed. And I proceeded to line the switch, holler at my brakeman to put it in emergency, because he was taking off. And when I started running after I got the switch lined up, and I tried to reach out to get him at Grandview Main Street crossing, and he took off down the hill. Well, I got left at Grandview, and that was one of my biggest fears at the railroads, getting left by my train. And I had to call Hillsboro operator and tell him I got left at Grandview, that my crew was going with the trains up at Egan. So he hollered at the police department in Grandview. They picked me up, took me to the highway. The highway patrol had to take me to Egan. And when I got to Egan, I got on my caboose. Well, I got on my engine first and told him what happened. He went, "Oh my God," the engineer just went shocked. He didn't know he did that. I get on our caboose, and my brakeman sound asleep.
Okay, that's typical. Yeah.
For those that know Trapper well, I'm not so sure that was an accident that they left him behind.
I wasn't going to say anything, Daryl, but
Yeah, I feel the love of this group here. I really do.
Yeah.
So that everybody understands, on a caboose, there is a brake. You can set the brakes via the caboose just like you can on the engine, and the way that the brake lines, if you've ever watched these movies and the trains always break apart and they keep rolling, not necessarily the case unless they do something called bottling the air, and you never see them bottle the air before they break those trains apart on those movies like that. But what happens is the brakes work in reverse of what you would think, because when they have no pressure on them is when the brakes lock up. When there is pressure on the train line, the air line that goes from car to car, and they have the glad hands that connect in between the cars. When there is air pressure in there, then the brakes are away from the wheel. But on the caboose, that train line has got a valve back there, and you can click that valve and open it up and set the brakes on the train from the caboose, just like you can from the locomotive. So that's what Trapper was hoping his brakeman would do whenever he didn't get back on, but didn't quite work out that way, did it?
Didn't quite work that way, no.
Yeah.
Well,
Eric, I know you've still got a few more minutes here, but I want to get a couple more stories from you, and then we'll let some other folks talk here. Go ahead.
Well, for those of you that don't know, most of my time's been spent on maintenance away, so most of my stories are going to be based on that. We were doing CWR just on the brines.
What's a CWR just?
CWR stands for continuously welded rail. It's the new standard across all class 1s on the U.S. It's anything over 400 feet without a joint in it's considered continuously welded rail. And so an adjust is if a broken rail happens in the wintertime or you got to put in a plug rail in the wintertime, the rail breaks apart because of the temperature. You plug that rail in, and then obviously as the heat of the summer comes in, that rail will start to run and tighten, and you can get what's called a thermal misalignment or a sun kink, basically kicking the track out one way or another. And it's not detectable on any.
They can be really bad. I mean,
yeah, a train hits one at 60 miles an hour, won't know it's there until they're on it, and then it's in the dirt. There's no way to predict them.
Let me ask you a question. When you got a 400-foot long rail, how much will its length vary from summer to winter?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How much? The question was, Eric, on a 400-foot piece of rail, how much will it vary from summer to winter? How many inches or feet will that rail eat?
It depends on the climate. So obviously stuff like up here in Denver is going to be a little different than what's down in Houston. If it's in a curve, if it's tangent, is it between two fixed structures like a bridge or a switch or a railroad car? That ballast condition, all of that comes into play. And then if you put, if the ambient temperature is 95, the rail temp is typically going to be a minimum 115 on average. So there's all kinds of variables that come in. I know we've had them run where we only added an inch of rail in the winter. When we went out there to go adjust it and we torch cut it, we basically cut the ball and then the base and leave a piece of the web, and we just run it up and down, making an H and let it grow. We only added an inch at 50 degrees, and the rail ran 2 1/4 inches before we were done torch cutting, before it went stagnant. So there's a lot of factors that come into play. So we were out there doing that, and it was just me and one other guy. And the section gang, they were putting ties in a couple miles down the sub. And they finished. They were going to come up and help us because when you do that, you got to knock all these anchors off in either direction. So when we put the rail puller on, we can actually pull the rail to what we need to shoot the weld without causing any undue stress on the puller and the track. So they were coming back to help knock the anchors on because I think it was 148 between the rails that day when we were working. So they were going to give us a hand. And the truck driver was upset because it was Friday. It was 3 o'clock. They were supposed to be getting off on time, and he was ready to go. And so he comes out hooping and hollering and cussing us up and down. And while we're finishing up, while we're packing the weld about ready to shoot it, and I hear this sound of like tires peeling, like just hot rubber tires peeling. And keep in mind, we're on a bridge on a slight incline when this is going on.
Eric, I want to throw up and let everybody see. If y'all look at my view up there, there's images of sun kinks, so you can get an idea of what Eric's talking about right there. Those are some pretty bad ones too. But anyway, keep going, Eric.
So I hear that there's a sound when you're high railing a truck down the rails. There's just that sound from and Trapper knows what I'm talking about. When you hear it high railing in the heat at a slow pace, you hear just the tires peeling off the rail because of the heat, right? And so I start hearing that sound. The section truck's still running. So I look at my welding truck. I'm like, well, no, the PTO's running. So the brake's set. I know it's not us. And I look back, and the whole time this truck driver's hollering at us, I'm looking back around him. His truck is slowly rolling away from him down the track because he got so excited about having to work late, he forgot to set the brake on the truck. And so he had to chase that truck for probably a good couple hundred yards to go catch it.
Great.
Mike, I'm going to have to hop off here, but did you talk to, I'm doing what you asked me to do next month.
Yes, sir.
Does everybody know about that? And do they have?
And let me go ahead and share that with everybody. For August, our program, Eric is going to give it. He's going to be talking about signaling on the railroad. He's going to be talking about the difference in signals on centralized traffic control, block signals, dark territory, and the railroad rules accordingly. He's going to be talking about, and you'll hear him, I'm sure, explain how fusees are worked in dark territory. There's another thing that trains use called torpedoes, and there's some probably good stories about torpedoes and trying to scare some of your fellow train workers with torpedoes, but that's a whole nother thing. But he's going to be talking to us next month on that, and that's what the program is going to be about. So, Eric, appreciate you joining us from Colorado today. Have a safe flight back.
All right, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Eric.
So, Kevin, jump back on here and tell us another one. You got anything else?
Well, I guess I could talk a little bit about what I did for the Santa Fe and BNSF for 39 years, if there's some interest there. I hired on to the Santa Fe in 1979 in the industrial engineering department, and worked in that until 1992. Then I went to service design, where I got to work with the schedules and blocking in the computer. That was kind of a fun job because you really get to understand how traffic flows on the railroad. And it's really what I thought or what I've always considered one of the first of what I called high impact jobs, where you can affect things almost immediately by going into the computer and messing with the blocking. And so that was kind of fun. Then after the merger, coming to Fort Worth, I ended up going into business unit operations, which actually what I was doing was supporting marketing with capital projects, where we'd spend capital to put in switches or do other stuff to bring on new industry. And pretty much did that all the way through the end of my career, even though in the last year, my job actually got moved to business development. But that's kind of interesting, because over those years, spending capital, I got to help build the shuttle network, build the Bakken, the frac sand network, ethanol, which is interesting. We really unitized a lot of stuff, and really opened up a lot of markets to new industries and so forth. But the ethanol trains in particular is interesting, because every facility we put in, we were in head-to-head competition with the UP, and we beat them out on every one of them. Yes, one of the reasons we offered unit train product, and that's what we did. We built unit train facilities, whereas UP just kind of tried to absorb it in the network, and they couldn't compete from a rate perspective. But I always found it interesting that they stuck to the way they wanted to do it, and we had our way of doing it, and it really was a competitive project. But we built a facility here in Fort Worth, which is near North Yard. We did Birmingham, Los Angeles, and trying to think, Richmond, California. And that was one of our real successful programs. We're still, hauling a lot of ethanol. I won't go into the politics of all that, but it's kind of one of those interesting things, and it's really resulted in a lot of good business to BNSF. The other one that I don't know how many of you are aware of is the what we call the wet feed trains from Eddyville, Iowa to Dalhart, Texas. Eddyville, Iowa is it's a big Cargill corn processing plant, and it's amazing what all products you can get out of crushing corn. And what wet feed is, it's got actually a name called Sweet Bran. It's cattle feed, and it's basically the leftover product from making corn syrup and all the other stuff, where they extract the liquid out, and then you got this fibery stuff that cattle really loves for their last supper. What we came up with, and it's too bad Bill Brown's not on, because he was heavily involved with it too, and I think had a lot of the ideas, is that we run unit trains in rotary dump coal cars. And it's a tremendous amount of feed that we can haul out there. But again, running it in a unit train quantity like it is, we can price it very low. And the other interesting thing about it is that this stuff never freezes. It actually ferments en route. So, we never had to worry about it getting wet and freezing up in the car. And when you go to turn it and dump it, nothing comes out. So of course, the other good thing is that, unfortunately, with the coal business dropping off the way it was, this is a fortunate thing that we're able to take surplus aluminum coal hoppers and repurpose them into this service. And, we run quite a few trains a week, not only out of Eddyville, but a couple other places as well. And I think it's one of the real big success stories that I don't know how many people realize we've gotten into.
All right, Trapper, what do you got? Can't hear you, Trapper. You're muted.
Now can you hear me?
There you go.
All right, I heard out in 75, April of 75. And I spent 4 years down on the south end. That's Fort Worth to Houston, which is the old Jenny tracks. And we started going over the Katy down to Houston, Taylor, Texas. Then I swapped seniorities and went out west, out of Fort Worth. And I was switching the bowl, which is the end of Centennial Yard down by the diesel shop. That's what we call the bowl.
Or now Davison Yard.
Yeah, Davison Yard, yeah. And I was switching some tracks, building a train at the bowl. And I was trying to get on to our switch engine. And we had some kind of grease or oil on the first step. And when I went to make a step, I slipped off and started being drugged by the engine. My brakeman, Kim Kimbrough, I will never forget it, looked down and the look in his eyes was like, oh my God, I'm fixed to watch a man go underneath an engine. And I'm literally hanging on, dragging on the ground. And all of a sudden, both of us looked, and my engineer also looked out the window of the engine. And we see a switch before he could get it stopped. We see a switch there, and my foot, I got drug over the switch, and my foot got stuck into where the bar goes into where the rail. And I don't know the proper name for it, but my foot hung there and just literally pulled my kneecap out. And I proceeded, they finally stopped. When I let go, Kimbrough just shoved me, get me away from the engine. Well, over that process, I was on light duty, and they asked me if I wanted to be a yard master. So I trained for a yard master at Fort Worth, and I was that for 2 years. And the way my seniority sat, I pretty much worked all the time as yard master because the man ahead of me laid off or the man behind me laid off. So I was always the one who had to work all the time.
Yeah.
So that only lasted 2 years of being yard master. So, but yeah, I got all kinds of stories to tell, but it'd take a long time because there's a whole 22 years of that stuff.
Yep. Normally, and I was going to tell, Kevin had a story about a caboose a while ago. Again, working over in Cheney one time, they had spring switches on the west end of Cheney Yard, and a spring switch, it's a trailing point move, then you can go through it, and it just literally opens. It opens and it'll let the wheel go through it, and it closes right back up. And it'll stay lined in one particular place now, or one particular direction. You can, if you need to, throw it the other way, but a lot of times on a spring switch, you're not doing two direction moves. That's the reason they put the spring switch there. It's primarily for a single direction move. And on Cheney, they had those spring switches over there on one particular track, and we were picking up a string of about 8 cabooses. I, again, was the foreman on the job, and I had a guy that was the rear end brakeman, and let's just say he wasn't the sharpest pencil in the box. And I told him, I said, be careful that we don't back through the spring switch with these cabooses. And I'm halfway up the lead or either on the engine or something, and told him this. And so he acknowledged the direction, that I'd given him to do. And we pulled ahead, and all of a sudden, you start hearing metal twisting and all kinds of odd noises like Eric was talking about. And I told the engineer, stop it, stop it, stop it. And what we had was a failure to communicate. And he had backed the caboose string through the spring switch, and we had I think it was like 8 cabooses. We had 4 on one track, 3 on the other track, all on the same train, and one caboose was about 12 foot in the air when it all came stopped. And the trucks were still down on the ground, but the caboose was up in the air and twisted. It was torqued. So we called the car shop. They sent a truck with a hook on it out, and they slowly had us back the train or pull the train forward, and it lowered that caboose back down, setting it on the trucks on 2 different tracks. Then what they did was we disconnected the caboose on our train. Another engine came in behind it, drug the cars on the other track back, and then whenever it came back, it realigned that caboose, and the caboose then came back and lined itself up on one track. We then went over to Inglewood and finished up doing some stuff over there on the transfer. I saw that caboose go out on a train later that night. Invariably, people always ask about crossing accidents. And it's an ugly part of the job, but it certainly happens.
Yeah, more than we'd like for it to.
Yeah, a whole lot more. And understand, folks, that trains always have the right of way. That it doesn't matter who gets there first. The train always had the right of way.
And he will always win that fight too.
And there are very few people or situations where you come out on the top end of a train bite. That's what we call them, train bite.
I got 2 along those lines, right? I can tell you.
I've got 3. I was involved in 3 train car accidents. 2 of them were fatal out of the 3.
I got y'all beat by a long shot.
I'm sure you do, Trapper.
I'm just talking about 2 stories. I got more I can tell you about.
Oh yeah, I've been. I do not like crossing.
Yeah, my Uncle Steve will tell you. I said I've hit 5, killed 4.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that a trainman can see as they come down a crossing is a silver tanker straddling the tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the nightmare of a train.
School bus.
Well, a school bus is right there. Yeah, you're right. But the silver tanker, you don't know if it's fuel or milk. It could be either one, because they both are in silver tankers, and you don't know which one you're gonna fix to blast through, and you hope it's milk. But the other thing is, either way, you either ride the train through it and try to blast through it, or you jump off the train and try to go in the opposite direction so that it run away from the track, because there's fixing to be a lot of debris and everything hitting and going crazy. But Dwayne, go ahead and tell us a couple of stories there, or a story.
Yeah, my family worked for the Frisco going back several generations. I'm the first one to actually, have a little bit of sanity and not work for the railroad. But Dad was hauling a train out of Thayer, Missouri, which is down toward the Boot Hill, heading back toward Springfield. And it was a pretty common run for most of my family, in fact. And there's a spot coming back in. They're about an hour and a half or so out of Springfield, and the highway and the tracks in the main line parallel each other for a good long ways. And it's middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock of a morning, and they're running along, and Dad was a head-end brakeman. And he looks over on the highway, and there's a truck, pacing them as they're going. And Dad leans over and looks at the engineer and says, "Hey," points out the window, goes, "We got one pacing us. What you bet he races us to the crossing up here?" And he goes, "Oh, he's gonna." And so the engineer hits the horn a few times, and the guy floors it and takes off trying to race him to the crossing, and lost. And they threw it into emergency and still hit him, cut that truck in half. And they finally get it stopped and go walking back there looking around for him. And they're walking up, and the bed of the truck's laying over here on one side, and they're walking out, and Dad's like, "Do you hear something?" And the engineer's like, "Yeah, I hear music." As they walked up to the cab of the truck, the tape deck was still playing, and of all things, it was Molly Hatchet. It was playing "Flirting with Disaster," and killed him bigger than Christmas. My Uncle Steve was coming into town one night, and when you come out in Springfield, there's 2 yards there. When you come out of the north yard, you'll come around this big sweeping curve, and there's these huge grain silos there and a warehouse for florists. And it's a blind crossing. They can't see, and as a driver in a vehicle, you can't see the track, and the guys on the train can't see you. I mean, it's one of those, if you're smart, you cruise up and you stop, and you don't trust the crossing guards. Because I had that one bite me one night going to college. Almost got hit by a switch engine that didn't light the crossing lights. But Steve was coming in with a cut one night, and all of a sudden, it's just like they came around the corner, and there was a guy crossing over, and they hit him. And they weren't going real quick, but that's still, that tends to be fatal when you hit a guy in a door with a coupler on a moving engine, And they go walking around. They go start looking for him. They got to stop pretty quick because they were barely going. And they're looking around, and he's not in the car. No body. Can't find a body anywhere. And it's like, we did not hit him hard enough to throw him out of that car. And they're looking around, and pretty soon behind him, and this is, again, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and here's his voice, "I bet you all are looking for me." And Steve said about jumped out of his skin because it scared the hell out of him. And he goes, "Yeah, where were you?" And he goes, "Man, I stepped around the corner. I figured you all were going to take me to the hospital. I had to get out of my underwear. I wasn't about to go to the emergency room looking like that." Now, my absolute favorite story, though, hands down, and it's a really quick one. We had a guy that gave us the keynote speech at the LSR convention down in Round Rock a few years ago, and he was an old engineer. And he told some of the greatest stories, but my absolute favorite, he was working a train somewhere down south of Austin, and they got a call from the dispatcher, and he says, 12, can I get a status? And he says, he comes back and he says, "Yeah, dispatch, this is 12. I've got good news and I've got bad news." He says, "Well, give me the good news." He says, "The good news is the derailleur works as advertised."
We stop right there.
Yeah, exactly.
On the non-fatal accident that I was in is kind of a funny story. Back in college, before I worked for the railroad, I used to go down, and there's a small railroad down in Lufkin that runs on track that used to be Southern Pacific track down there called the Angelina and Neches River Railroad, the A&NR. And you occasionally see their boxcars around here as they pass through, because on the A&NR, they've got three main industries on there that they really work. One is a tie plant where they creosote
plant, yep.
Creosote railroad ties. Another is a grocery store warehouse, but their big one is a paper mill, and they will take large rolls of paper and ship those to back in the day, newspaper printing industries, and where they would print newspapers. And these rolls, they put like 4 or 5 rolls in an entire 40 or 50 foot boxcar. That's how big the rolls of paper were. They're monstrous rolls of paper. And so when I'd get out of school at Stephen F. Austin in college, I'd run down about 10 or 12 miles down to Lufkin and try to find the the guys on the railroad and the switch crew, and they'd let me ride along with them. And I got to be friends with them and stuff, and I liked trains, and everything was good. So I would catch a ride and riding in the cab or the caboose. Well, this one particular day, we had a switching move at the creosote plant, and they would take empty gons out there and pick up loaded gons with creosote ties in them. And we're trundling along out through the middle of these woods out there, and these pine trees that they had are, you know, down through there where they replanted and harvested and then replanted pine trees, and they're 4, 5, 6 inches in diameter. And you could look through the pine trees pretty easy underneath the canopy. And we're trundling down through there 5, 6 miles an hour because the track wouldn't do much more than that. And we're shaking back and forth in the locomotive, and Trapper knows exactly what I'm talking about. When those ties aren't set real well and the rail is old, you just do this number back and forth down through there. And when I say trundling, it literally is trundling down through there. It's about all you can do. And we were in a SW 1500 switcher. Now, Dwayne, for you, that's a diesel switcher, just so you know.
I know what it is. I've drove those things all around the yard in Springfield before I was 10.
So anyway, we're in this locomotive, and we were rear end lead. Now the front end is the long nose end, and the cab's on the back of that locomotive, and the rear end was leading. So we had windows all over that thing. You can see out those things for miles whenever you've got all those windows on the rear end of that thing. And we're going down through there, and all of a sudden we can see this car puddling along through the trees, and we can tell that it's going to get to the crossing just a little bit ahead of us. And there were no crossing gates. This is out in the country. All you had was a pole and then two crossbucks on it. That's it. And this one didn't even have railroad crossing on it. It was just two white arms across each other. And so as we start coming down through there, this little old lady pulls up onto the middle of the track, and she looks out her window and she sees the locomotive there, and she totally freezes. Now, her and her little girlfriend, about her same age, and we're talking 75, 80 years old at this point, and they had gone somewhere and were coming back home, and they pulled up on the track, and you could see her. She didn't know whether to go forward or put it in reverse, and go forward and put it in reverse. And she does this number back and forth in the middle of the intersection or the middle of the crossing. And finally, she decides to back up. At which point, when she put it in reverse, the locomotive came across, and she was perpendicular, obviously, to the track. And we came across and caught the front bumper of her car with the edge of the locomotive, and started dragging her and bouncing her all the way down the right-of-way for about 35, 40 yards before we can get it stopped, because we weren't going that fast. And the engineer saw what was fixing to happen, and he was applying the brakes when we actually had the impact. And needless to say, bless their hearts, they were both shook up. A few bruises. Their car was messed up, but no fatality on that one. Everybody walked away, and the train crew, we were kind of laughing about it because we could just see it all in slow motion fixing to happen, coming together, and how she didn't know which way to go, forward or backwards. But that was a good one. The other two that I had, one was on the BSM. The Blue Streak Merchandise at one time was the fastest train in the world for a freight train. And it ran third morning delivery from Chicago to Los Angeles on the Cotton Belt. when that train was hot on the Cotton Belt, if you slowed that train down and paused it for more than 6 minutes anywhere, the whole crew had to write a letter, and then individually had to write a letter to the superintendent of the railroad telling them why. It was the hottest train. And literally in Tyler, what you would do when the train came out of Chicago to East St. Louis, Missouri, to Pine Bluff, to Texarkana, to Tyler, to Corsicana. In Corsicana, it switched onto the SP. It ran from Corsicana to Hearne, to San Antonio, to El Paso, and out to Los Angeles. That was the route. And when you got to Tyler Yard is, I want to say, a couple miles long. And they would have the outbound crew waiting on the north end of the yard, and they would drop them off. And you would you get your grip, which is the railroad term for suitcase, where you carry your clothes to get out of town. The crew and their grip and their stuff would be on the north end. They would board the engine. The head end crew would board the engine. The rear end crew would board the caboose as the train rolled through the yard. During the time that the train was in the yard, the crews would exchange information. The engineers would swap spots. The train never stopped rolling, and the outbound or the inbound crew would get off on the south end of the yard, and the train never stopped. It just kept on going. That train was rated for 80 miles an hour on Cotton Belt. It was rated for faster than any other train, and it always had the hot shot motive power on it. We were coming on the BSM out of Texarkana towards Tyler, and in Pittsburgh, Texas, the main line goes right. And when I say the main line goes right beside a building, I'm talking about it's literally close clearance, impaired clearance beside the track to where a building was built there. It's tighter than anything that should be allowed anywhere. And there was a main street that was right beside the building. We were coming through there about 1:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning, and we were blasting down through there at 75, 80 miles an hour, and we came past the edge of the building, and right as we did, a car came on the other side of the building, and we met at the intersection at the train crossing. And the train finally got stopped about 5 or 6 miles down the track. The engineer said, "You guys wait here. You don't want to see what's happened back there." The head end crew went back or stayed on the engine. He was gone for about an hour, hour and a half. What come to find out was it was a guy who was a drummer in a band who just finished playing on a Saturday night at a club, and he was sleepy and he ran through the crossing signals, and the train, he got there at the wrong time.
Sounds like a drummer.
Yeah.
Mike, I got one story to tell the guys. Sure. Down in Pinehurst, if y'all know where that's at, we were coming down, going south to Houston.
You want to look here? Look right here.
Where? Oh, and come up on the crossing and to see a yellow pickup truck with 2 people in it and a boat. And I was happened to be on the head brakeman on the job, and we come to it, and I'm going, we get closer, and all of a sudden I'm starting to see him on a CB, and he's kind of coasting toward the crossing of the railroad tracks. And I hollered at my engineer, and I said, is he fixed to roll in front of us? And next thing I know, he literally pulls in front of us. His boy was on the passenger side, and his boy looked up at me on the brakeman side of the engine and laid down in his daddy's lap because he knew he was fixed to hit him. We hit him so hard, it tore off the snowplow off our engine.
Wow.
Slow. Now, as Mike was talking about, this goes into slow motion. Literally, it went in slow motion. I watched that truck go around. We knocked it out. It pulled the eye bolt off the boat, just tore it out. And all I see is the truck and the trailer for the boat flying in the air. The boat's left on the street. Finally get it stopped. So I'm walking back there. My engineer's trying to call the dispatcher and all that. And I walk back there and I got cutting the crossing to get everything so we can get back and forth to it. And I walked over and I asked anybody, do y'all know where the guy is? Because I couldn't see anybody in the cab of the truck. And this guy comes up, walking up to me, and he has a gash from just right across his forehead, face. And he walks up, and he's with another guy, and the guy's kind of helping him, and he goes, excuse my language, but he pretty well cussed me out tearing up his boat. Well, in my process, I get to fence mode, and I go, where is your blank, blank, blank son? And one of the ladies is standing over there. Oh, he's over there playing. What happened is when we hit the truck, it blew out the front windshield. When the truck went around and hit the third unit, it shot both of them out the front windshield, and they both survived. The truck was just mangled. Wow. The trailer to the boat was mangled. Like I said, it literally tore the snowplow off the engine. When we tried to get into Houston, all they did is come along trying to tie it up. Well, we hit Old Spring Crossing, which is Jailhouse Crossing in Spring.
Yep.
We hit it, and it literally tore the whole thing off, and we started sliding on top of it before we could get it stopped.
Wow.
But that's how lucky some people can be at road crossings.
Yeah. Trevor, you should have swerved.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Well, I've got a good a fatality, non-fatality grade crossing one for you. I was riding the Texas Eagle up towards going to Chicago, and about midnight we stopped, or we're getting ready to hit, I think it was Little Rock, and it woke me up because we stopped a little abruptly, and I looked in my map and see where we're at, and just went back to sleep and woke up 4 hours later, and we were still sitting in the same spot. I found out later that the train was starting to slow down for Little Rock and saw a vehicle in the track. So they of course got stopped in time, being they were slowing down anyway, and it was just an Amtrak train. So they called the police. The police came and found a dead body in the car. So all of our guess was that somebody was trying to hide a murder by putting the body in the car on the track. So
and y'all hit them. Yep.
And nobody hit him because it was Amtrak and they were able to get slowed down in time. But yeah, normal train probably would have just run it right over.
Yep.
Yeah, you see some really stupid stuff. Dad had a guy one night, same area. My Uncle Steve hit the guy and didn't kill him. They were coming through, and there's this little cinder block building that is probably, you could fit the whole thing in my living room here, and it's a bar. And they were coming around the corner there, and as they came through, Dad's on the front end, and this guy's standing in the doorway, and he looks up and waves at the train as they go by. And they pull up into the yard, and the dispatcher comes on, and he calls out there and calls the engineer and calls Dad by name. Didn't even call the train number, called him by name. Dad's like, that's not right. And I said, did you guys see somebody back there at whatever the name of the bar was? And he said, yeah. He said, the police need you guys to get back over there. And he's like, what's going on? He goes, the police need to talk to you guys. So they jumped in their cars and drove over there. And that guy had evidently saw him, waved at everything, walked over, sat down next to the track, gauged it, laid back over between the trucks on the car as it went by. Took his head off.
Yep. Seen that.
Suicide by
Yep.
Too many people try to use train for suicide.
Oh yeah.
Well, one time 3985 was coming through from Fort Worth to Dallas, and a homeless person jumped out in front of that steam engine in Arlington. And that was the last trip that 3985 made down through here. I don't know if y'all remember when that happened or not, but it did. Well, guys, it's almost wrap up time. I was gonna tell you one funny story with a crossing incident, and then we'll wrap up for the day and call it done. But the going up on the same rail line that Trapper was just talking about goes through Conroe. Out on after it leaves Spring, it goes through Conroe. And if you ever go up 45 and look, if you're from Houston to Dallas and you get to Conroe, there's an area the right-hand side where the main line runs up through there. And back in the day, before Conroe and Houston really exploded, there was a Boy Scout camp on one side of 45, on the west side of 45, but the main line goes on the east side of 45 and parallels 45 for a little bit. And that area down there is known for fog in the fall of the year. A lot of fog down through there. And also the crossings have a crown to them. So they come up and they crown up and then they go down the other side right in that area. And there was a mobile home that was being delivered and got high centered on the track. And the fog was in such a way they couldn't get the notification to the locomotive, to the train crew, before the train crew could come to a stop or whatever. And they hit that going full speed and hit that mobile home. Now, obviously, nobody was around it. There was nothing but debris, but it blasted that mobile home into 1.5 million pieces. And
rekitted it.
One of those things that should have been in a movie somewhere, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Mike, and you know about this, about that fog. It's so thick down there.
Oh, it's
sometimes.
so thick, yeah.
The headlight of the engine, you can read the book inside the cab. It
doesn't pierce it. Yeah, it sure doesn't. Well, folks, it's been my pleasure to have you here. I hope you guys enjoyed the meeting. We're coming up on 2 hours and 20 minutes. There's some fun stories. We may have to do this again. If y'all want to do it again, it's always fun to swap some stories like this. I want to again remind you about NMRA X, Gateway X, this next week. If you're looking for information about it, you can go to the Speed. Is there an NMRA X website that they can go to, or is there a link to it off of the NMRA website?
The best place to go to is to go to the nmra.org website and go to the calendar and find the event for the whole week.
That's really good. That's really good. So there's a lot of good stuff, and the Lone Star region is extremely well represented that in doing clinics for this thing, and the people in North Texas are very well represented as well doing clinics. So those of you who are still on here who are helping out with that, really appreciate it, and doing a good job there. We will not be meeting again, as I want to reiterate, face-to-face for another few months, and it's just going to be kind of playing it by ear to see exactly how things shake out. So if you we'll get back on these flat cars and start that up just as soon as we can, but obviously everybody's health is a major concern, and we want to make sure that everybody stays healthy in these strange times we're living in right now. You guys all have a great week, great month, and we will see you again on the second Saturday of August. Same time, same place, right here on Zoom at 10 a.m. on the second Saturday. Have a great time, guys.